Welcome to the FHS Africa podcast. We're joined by Andrew McLaughlin, founder and managing director of Develop Hotels Incorporated, and an ambassador for FHS Africa. With 30 plus years in hotel development across Africa, Andrew specializes in owner side development management for investors and developers. Andrew, great to have you join us.
Thanks. Good afternoon. I'm very excited to be part of this podcast.
We're glad to have you, especially as an ambassador. You're really close to what we do. You get what we do and you fully understand the impact of that. So it's our pleasure to have you on this podcast. So can you talk us a little bit through about what Develop Hotels does as a specialist in owner-side hotel development management and how it fills the gaps for investors and developers in Africa?
Sure. So just as you sort of highlighted in the sort of quick intro, so I've been developing hotels across Africa for almost 30 years in 35 different countries. Sort of coming out of COVID as the world is restructuring itself, I just saw that there was a gap between owner and operator, between owner and the professional team, and between the owner and the lenders. And there was nobody necessarily in the room that was looking after the owner's interests. And I wanted to go on my own after sort of 30 plus years in sort of corporate sort of hotel groups. And this gave me the opportunity to create Develop Hotels Inc., where I incorporate sort of my skill and knowledge and really am the sort of conduit between the owner and the professional team, making sure that every professional decision from a design point of view has sort of the ultimate sort of question: what is the net operating sort of income going to be to the owner with that particular sort of design decision? The same when it comes to the hotel brand. Should the hotel be branded or not? If it is branded, which is the best brand for that particular hotel in that particular market? And what is the best sort of contracts that the owner should have with the hotel brand? So again, sort of aligning the owner's interests and making sure that there's somebody in the room protecting and looking after the owner and making sure that whatever decision is being made by the hotel brand from a contractual point of view, from a legal point of view, from an operational point of view, is ultimately having sort of it's looking after the hotel guest, but also having a net operating income for the owner. And then again, from a capital stack point of view, assisting the owner in making sure that the capital stack is correct, that there's the correct required equity and debt in place, that the hotel is going to be sort of financially sort of sustainable over the years. And with my skill, knowledge, and experience, I am in essence represent the hotel owner through the full sort of journey of a hotel development. So from that first cup of coffee and that sort of big idea, and very quickly deciding, is that a great idea or is it a bad idea? If it's a bad idea, the project ends over a cup of coffee and we've saved them $100 million. If it's a good idea, we can translate that into a great idea and then take the owner through the sort of the steps of a development journey. So from an inception, working out what the product should be in that marketplace, asking the correct questions as to how much equity the owner has, and then actually starting off with a profit and loss statement and working out what the hotel is going to cost, and so what the hotel is going to generate from a return point of view, and then working backwards to work out what is the development costs that we can actually afford for that hotel. And if we actually package that correctly up front, so we know how much money we can afford to develop, we can actually then brief an architect and start designing a hotel that's going to be financially viable. Because often over the years, I've come across many developments where the owner has an idea, he approaches an architect, and his first question is, can a hotel work? And the architect will give an architectural answer where he's not incorrect, but he will be able to say, yes, the hotel can work in this location, but he's talking about design, not about the commercial realities. Is it actually going to make financial sense? He'll ask the same question of a town planner: can a hotel work in this location? And the town planner will give him a town planning question answer. And it's you go through sort of that sequence. So from an idea to design development to what is the best business model if an operator comes in, assisting with the selection of the operator and the correct fees, and then all the way through to detailed design development. So where I sort of step away from the project a little bit is when it gets to sort of the raw sort of construction. So I joke with colleagues and say, I'm not a cement head. So when you're wearing sort of a hard hat and a safety vest, I'm not going to walk around the site and tell you that that column is skew. Or so by that stage, I've assisted the owner in picking the professional team, and he should have one of the best project managers on board who's going to assist him when he's actually selecting his main contractor and the construction contract that's going to be in place for that sort of specific hotel. And my role then is to really make sure that we're keeping an eye on budgets, we're keeping an eye on program, we're making sure that the mock-up room is built as early as possible, that it actually is inspected by the hotel group that's involved, and then really gets quite hands-on again in the final countdown as the hotel gets ready to open, sort of the last 9 months before the hotel opens.
You made mention earlier on of operating over 35 African countries. Now, if I'm correct, I think you've done over sort of 150 deals worth over $5 billion. Is that correct?
Yeah, so over my career, that's correct. So, and initially with Protea Hotels, and then opening the Radisson office for Radisson in Africa, and then with Hilton. So, over the years, I've really sort of cut my teeth in a lot of sort of pioneering markets, and obviously lots of established markets like Nairobi, where this event is taking place. My first project I was involved in Nairobi was in 2004. It was the Tribe Hotel, which is a very successful lifestyle hotel in Gigiri. I was then involved in the Radisson Blue in Upper Hill, where the conference is actually taking place. And then at the Park Inn in Westlands and the Radisson Blue in Upper Wrexham. I've been involved in a number of other deals since then, from a developed hotels point of view, representing owners, looking at service department projects, airport hotels.
So, Andrew, talking about your vast experience across Africa over many years and many projects, what are some of the unique challenges in operating on the African continent?
So I think the one sort of challenge that's a lot of owners face is they often first time hotel investors. So we're not in a lot of these sort of emerging markets. You don't have institutional investors, and you don't have large investor groups that are sort of investing sort of in multiple hotels. So this is often a net worth private individual who's made a lot of money in his core industry, and he then wants to invest in a hotel because he sees that there's a dying need for a quality hotel in the city that he potentially lives in. And he in essence sort of packages the project incorrectly. So he has aspirations as to what type of hotel he wants and what type of brand he wants, and he's never really asked the question, what is the hotel going to cost, and what is the return on investment? And often he pushes the button and actually starts the process without knowing what the cost of the hotel is and what the return on investment is going to be. And he gets quite far down the line. So he's acquired the land, he's got his rights in place, he's traveled the world and stayed in some wonderful hotels, and he's got a pretty good idea as to the aspirational hotel projects that he wants. He then briefs an architect and says, I would like this to be like Hotel X that I stayed in a city somewhere else in the world. And the architect is also not an experienced architect in the hospitality sector. It's somebody that might have experience in commercial real estate. So he's done a couple of offices and maybe a bit of residential. And they start the projects incorrectly. So they end up oversizing the projects, over designing the project, and nobody's keeping track of what the cost is going to be. He then starts construction and assumes if when the hotel sort of tops out, meaning the core and shell is up, he's halfway, and he's only 30% into his investment, and then he suddenly starts realizing that he's running out of the sort of investment capital to actually finish the hotel. So if you travel across Africa, you find lots and lots of sort of hotel carcasses. You have these half-built hotels that are never materialized, and it's because they don't really they underestimate what the cost of the hotel is going to be, how long it's going to potentially take to build, and they don't have all their funding in place. And sometimes that's got to do with the local sort of zoning rights, that once you've actually acquired the hotel, you've got a land lease you have to build within a certain time period, and the owner starts building. I've seen quite a lot of markets. Owners want to show their commitment to a project, so they actually start the project and they build the core and shell, and then they actually get hoteliers involved. So they'll approach a hotel brand to have a look at the property, and then find out that it's been designed incorrectly, and you're going to actually have to do some demolition work, which is something that the owner doesn't particularly want to do, because he spent a lot of sort of hard-earned cash building something, and then somebody's telling him you're going to have to knock half of it down. So it's primarily about picking the right sort of professional team, having the correct program in place, and making sure that you've got your entire project sort of funded, or you know exactly how you are going to fund your hotel before you actually push the button. So most guys are too eager to start, so they start too soon, and then either have to stop the project or run out of money because they've made too many mistakes along the way. So you can do a lot of value engineering while everything is still just on paper. And so often I come into a project, if I'm not there at the very beginning, but the project hasn't started, it's you get the project to sort of pause and just make sure that you look at the primary sort of fundamentals. Otherwise, an owner is going to end up finishing a hotel and then realizing he's going to struggle to make a return. He's going to struggle to even service his debt because he's allowed the project to be overcapitalized from a build cost point of view and from a time point of view.
Okay, that's so beyond this vital initial advice, obviously you also provide advice on brand searches, operator negotiations, rights, franchises, leases, etc. Am I correct?
Yes, yeah, correct. Yeah, so that's the one thing that the owner really has the luxury of today. If I look at when I first started sort of going into across Africa, looking at a sort of hotel developers. Today, the owner has lots and lots of choices. There's probably close to 150 brands active on the African continent. So as an owner, you've got more choice today than you've ever had in deciding who you potentially want to work with. And there's also a sort of a strong sense that there's people are wanting sort of independence and sort of individuality. So in some markets, what you're seeing today is you're actually seeing owners electing to actually create their own brand and actually go on their own. So what's happening, as an example, in South Africa, there's two very, very successful restaurant operators, which are now moving into the hospitality space. So if you take in Cape Town, there's one of the top restaurateurs called the Cove Collection, which runs multiple destination, high-end, big spend restaurants. They've moved into the hotel space as well, and they've elected to actually create their own individual names for their hotels, and they run them themselves. So they've started off with the Elephant in Constantia, then they did the Mali in Camps Bay, and a couple of months ago they opened their biggest hotel, which is just over 60 keys, called the Cole in Seaport, which they run independently. And the Marble Group have also announced that they're going into the sort of hospitality space. And as an owner, there's also different business models that you can look at now. So in the past, you dealt with the big sort of global hotel brands. There's now and you typically were going to do a management contract. You're seeing that there's an increase in franchising on the African continent. And franchising normally shows that there's a maturity in the market. So if you take North America or Europe, is North America, about 80% of the hotels are franchised because the owner and the owner class has become a little bit more sophisticated and understands how they want to actually run their own business. But they still want to plug into a brand and a sales and marketing and reservation and loyalty system, but they want to run the business themselves. And the same in Europe. And Africa's, over the last sort of 5 years, has seen sort of the franchise business sort of grow to sort of probably 30% of the pipeline. It used to be sitting sort of below sort of 10% a couple of years ago. And with the emergence of franchising, what you've also seen is there's also an emergence of sort of third-party management companies that have sort of been established on the African continent as well, which are also starting to sort of grow, and they're giving an owner an option that you can actually have a third party management company manage your business and have a franchise with a global brand. And it's also worked quite well for the global brands because some of them have elected to actually sort of post-COVID not have the same size of local team on the African continent. So they can't actually service the hotels as well as they used to because they don't actually have the management expertise on the ground on the continent. So there's been quite a good, healthy relationship between global brands that are wanting to continue to grow their pipeline and have a third-party management company manage the business. But what I've also seen is I've seen the big brands just do direct franchises with hotel owners. So hotel owners might decide that they want to go on their own and rather get an asset manager to actually assist them from an asset management point of view. And then there's people that are just creating their own brands. And it really depends on the sophistication of the actual market. So if you're in a city that's now really quite seen as sort of a global destination, you actually have the ability to potentially actually create your own independent hotel because you know that sort of 40-50% of the bookings coming into your hotel are coming through OTAs, and you don't necessarily need the brand to actually drive that business into your hotel. But then if you're in a more of an emerging market, and it's a city that's still growing, having a strong global brand in that city is actually very, very important. And it's going to give a sense of reliability, accountability. There's a sense of quality. You know that the hotel is safe, and their big brands obviously played a very, very important role. And then as you move into sort of the secondary cities, and then you might be better off actually with a regional brand versus a global brand, because the global brand might not necessarily have the penetration that you were hoping it was going to have into that market. And a regional or domestic brand might actually be a far better option in that market just because they've actually got a local or regional network, and you're not necessarily going to get the same revenue that you would under a global brand. So there's the great thing from a hotel owner point of view, you've got a really good choice, and it's really to make sure that you pick the right choice of brand and operator and business model for your particular hotel. And what we've also sort of seeing sort of post-COVID, there's also this emergence of sort of smaller hotels. So they're sometimes classed as sort of boutique hotels, but they're typically hotels between 40 and 80 rooms. And there's a lot of sort of family offices that are sort of prepared to invest in that size hotel, and where you actually are creating a lot of sort of individuality, and customers are actually wanting a lot of sort of individuality in their stays. And so again, you're having this growth of independent boutique hotels being developed, or you having these big boutique hotels being linked to sort of soft brands. So all the hotel groups have launched multiple sort of collection brands within different segments of the market. So they typically, if you were going to talk to one of the big five hotel groups, they all have a brand sitting in sort of the luxury segment, the upper upscale segment, the upscale segment, and sometimes even in the upper mid-scale segment, where the owner has the ability to create his own brand, but then be linked to a global hotel group and under a collection brand, which the brand standards are not as onerous as they would be for a hard brand. So your development cost is a little bit less, and you're able to sort of control your own sort of brand narrative. But you got to do it properly, and so it's not creating a logo or just creating a hotel name. And that's where sometimes owners get that wrong. They think that if you just create a name is a brand, and a name is not a brand. So you then need to make sure that you're actually dealing with a really, really good brand agency, and a branding agency is actually creating sort of a brand narrative, and that brand narrative becomes a brand brief that you're discussing, and you're briefing your interior designers, you're briefing your architect. But there's an actual brand narrative that runs through the entire brand journey of that particular hotel.
let's cast your expert eye on East Africa, considering that we're heading to that region now for the next issue of FHS Africa. To tell us a little bit more about what's going on in the region.
So I think East Africa as an actual region within Africa is actually very, very exciting because it's a region that has the ability to position itself in sort of corporate travel, so global corporate travel, regional corporate travel. It's got a strong MICE segment that's going to East Africa, and then it also has really fantastic leisure opportunities. So East Africa has the ability to provide you with some of the best sort of safari experiences you can have on the continent, and then it also has a really, really strong performing beach holiday segment in Zanzibar as an example. So if you look at the performance of Zanzibar and you look at the growth of hotel resorts being developed and open and trading in Zanzibar, Zanzibar is doing particularly well from a beach sort of development. Other parts of East Africa need to sort of reposition themselves. So Kenya doesn't have the same quality of assets. It doesn't have the same level of performance from a revenue point of view, from a beach holiday point of view, and it has positioned itself quite at this stage as a local market, but it has the ability, I think, to sort of turn the corner and as sort of resort operators, all-inclusive resort operators, look at that market, I think you're going to see an improvement. I think from a corporate point of view, obviously you've got two big gateways in East Africa. You've got Nairobi, which is sort of arguably sort of one of the three most important cities on the African continent. It's got great regional connection to the rest of Africa. It's got a really sort of strong sort of presence of global offices that are actually present in Africa from a private sector point of view to an NGO point of view, and it's really matured as a hotel market. It's got a real good spread of hotels and hotel operators. So it's got some of the best global brands present in the city. It's got some of the most important original founding East African brands still trading in the city as well, and it's maturing. It's got a luxury segment, an upscale segment, and an economy segment. What you are seeing is you're also seeing the development of sort of serviced apartments in Nairobi, and it's growing significantly as well. And you will slowly start seeing sort of branded serviced apartment supply sort of coming into Nairobi as well. This is the same from an Addis. Addis is, if you travel through Addis, you can't believe how impressive that airport is and how busy the airport is. And that is a huge catalyst to sort of what's happening in Addis. And then from a MICE point of view, obviously you can't forget Rwanda. Rwanda's the Kigali Convention Center has been a huge catalyst to what's happened in Kigali from a hotel development point of view. And Rwanda and Uganda have the ability to also tap into the safari space. So what you are seeing from an investor point of view, you're seeing high-end safari people wanting to actually create sort of circuits within that region and try and have the experience in Kenya and in Tanzania, but then link into the chimpanzees and the gorillas either in Uganda or Rwanda. And there's been a lot of activity in the safari space where owners of or operating safari lodges are seeing the potential benefit to link themselves to luxury hotel brands that weren't necessarily in that space. And the luxury hotel brands need to be in that space because they know that they've got customers that are wanting to go on luxury experiential travel. And if you are coming to Africa, the one thing that you do want to do is you do want to go on safari and you do want to have a luxury experience. So there's been quite a good merge between luxury hotels, and you've seen that with Ritz-Carlton announcing sort of its presence. You've got a Four Seasons, so you've got these luxury operators now in the safari space as well. But it's a complicated segment that people, I think, underestimate. It's very difficult, I think, to be successful in the safari space if you just have one lodge. You need to ideally sort of create a bit of a circuit, particularly in East Africa. So in East Africa, your safari experience is very circuit different, quite different to what happens in Southern Africa, where it's very much a destination safari experience, where you actually go to a single lodge, you base yourself there, and it's curated sort of safari experience, where in East Africa, you tend to do a bit of a circuit. And I think the guys that are going to really win are the people that actually control the circuit. And what you are seeing is you're seeing um, local East African investors that actually have developed amazing circuits. They've created their own destination management companies, and so they're able to control the full experience from a safari point of view, which is very exciting.
So you've been a long time supporter and advocate of FHS Africa, which has led to your current role as an FHS Africa ambassador. What are we doing right? What is FHS Africa doing right as an event? This um, impactful event across the continent, and you know, tell us a little bit more about your experience and why you're involved with FHS Africa.
So I've always been like I am today. So I'm an owner-centric developer. So I'm looking after the owner's interest. And when I look at investment conferences, I try and put the hat on as a delegate and say, well, if I'm a delegate and I'm paying money to attend something, I need to really make sure that it's worth my while. And there's like in every industry, there's a lot of noise around, and there's some really really pure quality events. And I think FHS Africa, as it's grown over the years, has been able to really put quality people in the room. So if you're a hotel owner or an investor, experienced or first time, you have such good value coming to an event like this, because you're able to network with the right people. You've got all the hotel groups that are present, so you're able to meet, um, and you're able to accelerate your potential development journey. And there's a basket of professionals that have been there that have lots and lots of experience, and it's a good learning. It's a good place to network. The venues are always selected very, very, very well, and it's Africa's leading hospitality investment conference by a long shot. And I've been supporting it from the day it started. I think it's very, very important for people to meet. And in Africa, we want to meet. We want to meet in person. We want to actually get to feel the people we're going to work with for the next 20 years.
Building those connections at a pure value events, drawing from your phrase, we might use it in our marketing. But perfect, Andrew. Thank you very much for your time and your insight. We really appreciate it, and I'll see you in Nairobi.
Look forward to it. Cheers.